The best lawyers aren't found in the big law firms. They're found in the stories of those who left. Hello, listeners and viewers of the Sell.Life podcast. I've got it with me another self-employed lawyer who I met probably at the start of this year. I believe we did an interview while I was in my former role, and then very excited that George decided to join the Self-Employed Lawyers League with me and Courtney, because George's story, every time I've spoken to him, there's always interesting tales. It's fascinating. He's worked from the base of Mount Everest. He's worked in companies all over the world. And his journey to me is just simply fascinating. And he's one of the most honest. He tells it like it is, which is very refreshing to me. Sometimes in law, people can withhold things. George is very forward. So, George, firstly, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. And I hope some of my journey or my experiences can be helpful to other people in their journey as well.
It absolutely will be. Having spoken with so many, that's why I was really keen to do this. So, as I said, the first question off the bat, where we start the journey, is when did you start your legal career, the study of law, and why? Because I know your why is a little interesting and different.
So, as a very simple background, I did not grow up in Australia. So I grew up in Europe and the States, and my family moved to Australia when I was 14 in the 80s. So I'm dating myself, and to Brisbane in the 80s. Mm-hmm. So if that means something to a lot of people, if they understand what that means. I also went to public school on the south side of Brisbane, which wasn't a salubrious part of Brisbane. So that's the background. I was quite a successful visual artist when I was in my teens in Brisbane. The culmination of my success was in 1988, the bicentenary year for Australia. The federal government went around the states and territories and picked one young and up-and-coming visual artist to represent their state and commission a piece of work for the bicentenary year, and that became an exhibition that traveled the country. I represented Queensland.
Wow.
Now, the other part of my background that you don't know about is I come from a mixed marriage, both North and South Asian. So my father is Tamil Sri Lankan, my mother is Chinese. All that stuff you hear about tiger mothers, it's actually quite true, certainly in my experience. So, cut a long story short, my mother said, you're not going to be an artist when you finish high school. You're going to do something substantial. And in our world, the substantial occupations, or acceptable occupations, was doctor, engineer, and lawyer. I am very squeamish at the sight of blood, so doctor was out. Really shitty at math, so engineer was out. So that left lawyer. Ta-da, yeah. Here I am. Yeah. So with that comes a different lens that I look at my legal career. So there's a lot of people who, my sister being one of them, my sister is 2 years older than me, and she has always wanted to be a lawyer, and she is a lawyer. Yeah. And she kind of subscribes to the basic and very structured hierarchy of the legal profession. Mm-hmm. I didn't know anything about it, so I push boundaries about stuff. So I will challenge people's notions about what things should be and how things should sit and hierarchy and all that kind of stuff. So which has given me a very interesting career, but it also means that I'm constantly fighting people's perception.
Yeah. And so in doing that, like being, asked, like my journey into law was complete. I never wanted to go to university, and I almost had a chip that I would never get a degree, but still be successful in business just to show people it can be done. But then my life journey took me into law. So I found the study really easy because I genuinely, I wanted to be there. I wanted this degree. How did you find studying law, knowing, or was it just like you shut that out of your mind and said, well, I'm here and I have to do it? How did you go through that?
I have a very strong kind of life philosophy about fighting the things that you can fight, but not fighting things that you can't.
Hmm.
I didn't have a choice. I was doing law. You just suck it up and you do it. The difficulty, however, and this is quite a few years ago now. I've been a lawyer for 30 plus years. The difficulty back then was to be successful in your legal career. All you needed was a very, very, very good memory.
Yep.
There was no focus on applying the principles of law into your exam questions. They were all closed book exams back then. So it was
Mm.
about regurgitating slabs of judgments. I'm like, I can't. I don't have that memory. I
Mm.
apply, and so that also was a problem in university. It has stood in good stead working
Mm.
because I know how to apply these principles rather than just spit them out. Because let me tell you, client doesn't give a shit about what the high court said in 2002 in some court case, right? They don't care. They just want to
Mm.
know what they can do. So I'm a better, and for that perspective, I'm a better in-house lawyer. So I think there's a huge difference between the skill base of a private practice lawyer and an in-house lawyer. I used to, and I'm an in-house lawyer. I've always been an in-house lawyer, mostly. And I understand the priorities of being an in-house lawyer. I used to teach about this as well, about the skills required to be an in-house lawyer as opposed to a private practice lawyer.
Yeah.
But yeah, it has been an interesting journey.
Mm. And so out of school, was it, because you said mainly in-house, did you do any like first year junior solicitor roles in private firms or?
Yes, unfortunately, I was in Queensland, and the
Mhm.
articles is 2 years as opposed to everywhere else in Australia. So you're already 2 years behind the eight ball in like places like I think Victoria is almost immediate. I think or New South Wales. I can't remember now, but yeah. So I did my articles for 2 years
Yep.
at a law firm in Brisbane. And then got qualified. But I actually count those 2 years as part of my education. So when people say, what's your PQE? I mean, granted, at this stage in life, it's irrelevant, the 2 years,
Mm.
because I've been working for such a long time. But early on, I'm like, well, I actually worked as a lawyer for those 2 years.
Yep.
And I was recognized that, I mean, for the law firm that I worked, it was a international law firm at the time. And I was told that I billed higher than most of the senior associates, and I was an article clerk. So I count
So
those
your
two
rate
years.
would have been lower, but so just the
Yeah.
production of work.
No, I churned through a lot of work. So in the 2 years,
Yep.
you're meant to rotate through four different divisions, right?
Hmm.
So each 6 months, you're a different division. At the end of the 2 years, I continued to work for each of the four divisions. They wouldn't let me go because each division wouldn't let me go because I'm a workhorse. I do work.
Yep.
I like working.
Yeah. And so throughout that journey, like getting into law, did you still maintain any of the creativity side, like the visual arts that you love doing?
I buy art. That's about it.
Yep.
I support young artists. So I do buy a lot of art from young artists and I follow them through their career and keep trying to support them financially. So
Yep.
on the plus side, so to a great extent my mother was right. She did say at the time that don't be an artist because you've got expensive tastes. I'm like, she was right. I do have expensive tastes. So the
Yep.
legal fraternity, even though I don't charge a lot of money, I still get paid a lot more than I would have gotten as an artist. So from that perspective, and I've also in the legal profession, I've found the things that I like about it, and I've
Yep.
found the things that makes me enjoy the profession.
Yeah. And so, yeah, in that, so went from international firm and then was it into an in-house role?
Yes. So, and because I am not bound by perceptions of tradition in the legal fraternity, I went from article clerk to qualified solicitor for 2 months, and then I decided that I wanted to do my master's. So I left and I did my master's. I started my master's and then got poached for a job. The job was in house,
Hmm.
and it was essentially a global role. It was global general counsel. to a great extent for a large
Yeah.
organization. And they didn't have an in-house position before. So I then created the in-house function for that company. I was very young. I was like 24 or 25, something like that. And you know, when you're young, you feel you're indestructible. So
Mm-hmm.
I thought I could run a global role, which meant all the time zones in the world, and also do my master's. And I'm based in Sydney. The
Yeah.
role was based in Sydney. The master's was in Melbourne. So I burnt out
Yeah.
after 4 years, I think, something like that, doing that role and then doing my master's at the same time. I did half coursework, half thesis. So flying down to Melbourne to do the coursework and then doing the exams and then writing the thesis, the mini thesis.
Yeah.
So I
Remarkable.
but you know, it gave me a lot of experience. I have one of my tool bags is creating legal departments for global multinationals and
Yeah.
embedding the legal function within them. I understand the push pull value of a cost center, and how to create tangible value as a cost center within a business. So
Mm.
that was the first role that made me turn my mind to that. And I do a lot of that now for a lot of organizations.
Yeah, that's an amazing almost apprenticeship in doing that because it's at such a young age building that out. So what was the masters, the thesis of your study?
So I went back to my visual arts background
Mm-hmm.
and I wrote a thesis. And when I devised the thesis, I didn't realize that when you finish the thesis, you've got to get it bound in a hard copy bound and all that kind of stuff. And the title of the thesis is gold lettering on the hard cover, and they charge you by the letter, right? And I didn't know this. So the title of my thesis was "The Legitimization of the Art of Appropriation" by George Paramananthan. I almost went broke just paying
Printing it.
for the title and the
Wow.
cover of the damn thing. But yeah, it was about the simple way to explain it was the thesis was about everyone understands music sampling.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a royalty scheme for sampling music when you're creating new music. My thesis was about doing the same thing for visual arts. So as a visual artist, I can pull pieces from existing work and create a new work and have a royalty stream associated with that.
When was this written? Back in
2000.
because it seems like ridiculously relevant in this day and age with AI effectively.
AI.
The like no, but was it? How did it? I guess I'm very intrigued now. How the thesis of it? What was was there a product that could come out of it? Because that sounds like
No,
for
no, no.
artists,
So
that's a
this
remarkable.
way, way, way. Oh, when I say, yeah, 2000. It was 2000 when I wrote it. It's way before AI. AI wasn't
Yeah,
even a dream. No, this was more about physical artwork. So there are a couple of artists that have actually done that,
yeah,
who have taken pieces of existing work and created new work from it and have been pilloried for it because they've stolen pieces. And I'm like, well, no, it's about whether they've created new work. So the similarity is like sampling. It's like sampling music. So
yeah,
that's why I call it the legitimization of the art of appropriations, because you're essentially appropriating somebody else's work. You're copying somebody else's work by creating a different message or a different feel or a different thing to it.
yeah.
But yeah, AI is
But
totally different. That's a whole different arena. And the federal government, in my opinion, is making a very bad decision about how they treat AI by letting it not be unregulated.
mm,
By letting it be unregulated.
yeah. Well, but just for artists, and that's what I'm thinking. It's was your like I guess the heart or the reason behind it because that's a lot of time to put into the idea of it. Was it because you saw artists being effectively ripped off from their works, or you saw it was stifling the creativity of other people? Because for me, I consider myself a writer, and obviously, we're always reading more books, and you get inspiration from the stories you read of the great the writers in the past, and I always go, it's a fascinating topic for me because it's like, where is the muse, or where do these ideas come from? And for me,
Well,
you want to properly attribute things, but you also want to be
100%.
creative.
So attribution is important. So we're now delving into law now. So attribution is moral rights. So Australia only
Yep.
has three moral rights compared to European countries have much, much more detailed moral rights. America doesn't, so that's the grade. We're somewhere kind of in the middle. America's nowhere, and then the European countries are quite far ahead. What you're talking about really is when you get inspiration from something, that's an idea. An
Mm-hmm.
idea is not protected by copyright. It's only the material form in which the idea is clothed. So if you copy the exact words from those exact books, then potentially that's a breach of copyright. But if you copy the idea, so the idea being, let's say, a very simple one I used to lecture in this. Ones that I use in my lectures is I've written a book, and it's about the problems that an immigrant has in assimilating into Australian culture. So that's the idea, but there is actual narrative in my book about what happens and all this kind of stuff. If you write the same book, if you write another book in this with the same idea, that's not necessarily copyright infringement unless it has the same plot progress
Yep.
in some way, and it's a substantially same plot progress. So no, the idea isn't protected. It's the material form in which that idea is clothed.
Yep. Amazing. It's always fascinating to me talking with lawyers because the law like intersects, sort of the rubber meets the road, particularly in terms of creativity. So after that burnout, did you take some time off law to just sleep
Yeah.
and recover?
Well, no, okay. So while working for this global multinational, I got involved with quite a well-known celebrity chef. So I was kind of licking my wounds and trying to just relax, but I thought I could do something different. So I started so I was still taking legal work as a consultant, just, bits and pieces here and there, the interim work that I'm kind of doing now. But my main focus was I had a catering business,
Yeah.
which did guerrilla dining. So I would there was two forms of it. So there was one where I would cater your dinner party. I'd come to you, I'd settle the menu, come to you, cook your dinner party, and leave.
Yeah.
And then there was a guerrilla dining one where I would say, here's the menu. The first 10 or 15 people who say yes get a seat at the table, and you get the venue about a week before the actual date. You get a
Yeah.
vague idea about where it is when you book, but then you get the final address on the day, a week before.
A pop up. That's cool.
Yeah,
That
I
would be
mean,
popular now.
it was very, very popular back then, guerrilla dining and
Yeah.
stuff. This is a long time ago too, mind you. And then but then legal work kind of took over, and I then I was poached for another job as APAC GC for another multinational,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked for them for about 3 years. And I was hoping that that would then become my role, because I agreed to that because as a global company, I can do more than legal work, and I proved that I can do more than legal work because I was acting CEO for the Australian business for a while. I was acting COO, HR director. They did a lot of M&A work. I did M&A work for them. I was a transitions director across Asia Pacific, blah, blah, blah. I took all these other roles as well as being the APAC GC. GFC happened, role got made redundant. I went back to my consultancy. So that was 15 years ago. So
Yeah.
that's I'm now just doing the same thing I've been doing for all that time, just being an
Yeah.
interim. So either an interim GC or just somebody that deals with the overflow.
Yeah. And so that was the genesis of you, well, effectively being in the self employment space and starting
Yes.
Paramco.
Yeah, but my thing when I started my business 15 years ago was I worked very hard for all the organizations I used to work for. And I made a choice that based on because I don't neatly fit into a box. So I have done work across so many different industries, and the legal fraternity doesn't seem to value that. I've explained to people I'm a general counsel, like a GP. I
Yeah.
can do almost anything, but lawyers don't like that. Lawyers say you're a general counsel, but they want somebody to have had a deep in your entire career doing this one thing or this one industry. And I find that limiting.
Yep.
I have done work across different industries. I have negotiated almost every type of contract there is. There is very little that I don't know about. There's certain things I don't advise on, but majority of the stuff, a contract's a contract. I know how to
Mm.
negotiate a contract. I used to teach in contract law. So it's not difficult. It's just understanding the industry, and it doesn't take terribly long to do that.
Yep.
So when I started my business, I also made a choice that it's as much as possible, it's 100% remote. And the focus of my business is to help for-purpose organizations, not-for-profit, and the arts.
Yep.
So they don't, as you can imagine, pay a lot of money, if any at all. So majority of that work is pro bono or low bono. My idea is that I have all these skills. I can't make the world a better place with my skills, but I can help people who are. So
Mm.
that's the focus of my that's what I try to do. Of course, I still need to pay the bills.
Yep.
So I then have this thing I call the Robin Hood strategy, where I accept work from corporates every so often to fund the pro bono and low bono work I do for the not for profits and the full purpose organizations and the arts.
Yeah. And so you have, because 15 years ago, like everyone talks, it's kind of funny. It's pre-COVID and post-COVID world
It
almost that we
is.
talk about. But you remotely pushing for remote back in 2008, that's like, has it just been something intrinsic in you that you just don't mind pushing back when you see this as an illogical system or
Yeah.
model? You just go, nah, I just won't accept it, because it's quite a rare thing in my experience for people to push back. Most people will be, they will be allowed to be pushed as a square peg into a round hole, and they will diminish themselves to do that. What's in your life or in your character, like what do you think's been the defining thing that you've gone, no, I just won't fit your mold?
I am who I am, and I'm bringing myself back to my childhood and upbringing in Europe and the States. I'm very forthright about who I am, and I'm not. Australians have a very different culture to how I grew up. So there's a lot of
Yep.
stuff that doesn't really resonate with me, and I don't really know how to deal with. So Australians like to hide their light under a bushel, pretend that they don't, they're not, this false modesty stuff. I'm not very good at that because, again, European and Americans. America try to hide a bushel under an American. That's not going to happen. But that jars differently for a lot of Australians. So a lot of my hurdles with people, and particularly the legal industry, is how closed an industry they are in thinking about stuff. They like to think that they're open minded, but they're not.
Yep.
It's certainly in my experience. People don't like how honest I am about a lot of stuff. And I do my best to try and crouch it in the nicest possible way, but it still jars with a lot of people. But I try to work to an ideal. So everything I do, I try to do with authenticity and honesty, and to the best of my ability, but also taking into account everybody else's interest around me. I will do my best to make sure that everyone wins in a scenario. I don't have that lawyer mentality where it's me against you. We're negotiating a contract and I want to screw you. So I'm going to put all this stuff in and I'm just going to dig my heels in. No, we're trying to get to a middle ground to to sign off on a deal. So let's be reasonable about this. I understand. And a lot of the times I've said to you, look, I don't understand why you're pushing this. Can you just explain to me why it's reasonable for me to accept this? Often most lawyers can't. They go, no, no, this is just our position. I'm like, well, that's helpful.
Mm.
Not. So, you've got to try and justify where you're at and justify it in a way that I can say, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I agree with you. So I'm happy to come to the middle ground with you. So there's a lot of that antagonism in the legal fraternity that I don't necessarily comply to. And when I ran the legal department, I also made sure that people, all my staff, I don't care how you work, where you work, so long as you get the work done. If you're not in the office, whatever. I my big thing always was I'm responsible for the department at the end of the day. It's my head. So during working hours, because I'm not a micromanager, so I give you something, you do it, but somebody in the department will get upset with something you've done and they will call me. I just need to be able to call you during working hours. Don't care where
Yep.
you are. I'll be able to contact you during working hours and go, this has happened. Can you give me a background so that I can respond? I will always defend you. I will always defend my staff. I mean, my last permanent role, I had a team of 5, and they were all, and I inherited that team. They were all badly paid. They were good at what they did. They were badly paid. Over the 3 years that I was there, my salary did not go up. I
Yep.
baked increases in the budget, but it was for them, not for
Yeah.
me. I mean, there's a lot of pluses to that because they see that you value them. They will go above and beyond for you. There's goodwill associated with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But that's a remarkable journey and to fight again. And the reason I guess I go a bit deeper on it is because I've always, I came into law and I'm not exactly shy about calling out the traditional model for what it is, the toxic place that it often is. That, as I tell a lot of people, I think I did a podcast with someone recently and they said lawyers are like this. And I said, I've come to the opinion after interviewing over 1,200 people from, your position, global corporate counsels, to people who are the DUI lawyer in a small regional town. I said there's a systemic issue in how lawyers are effectively trained and put through this system, and then they become like that competitive, that antagonistic, that I have to win at all costs. But I said deep down, I just don't believe humans, like when you actually sit down one-on-one with anyone, most humans don't have that. There are psychopaths, but as a general rule, the majority of the population isn't like that. If you actually take the time, which is why when I hear you talking about contract negotiation, I'm like, yeah, I've found if you just take the time to understand the opinion, you might find it's not like there's something else behind it being masked. And if you just like, can you just explain it to me? And if you can explain it to me in a rational way, then we can reach an agreement on this. So rare, but so encouraging, I think, to see someone who's willing to just push back and stand tall, because I think the industry is changing. And look, I've only been in this for a few years. You've been in this multiple decades, so you may have a lot more scars and might be a bit more tired than me, but it's changing. I can see.
Yeah. I have to say, I mean, so there's a bunch of things that I've tried to change with the profession over the years in my action more than anything.
Yes.
So, for example, I've always pushed for hire to be about skill, not about experience. If somebody is good at what they do, they exhibit the skills. It's not rocket science what we do. It's just, if you're smart enough to pick shit up, then you can pick this stuff up. It's not that difficult. The foundation has to be there. Don't get me wrong. You need to have the right attitude. You need to and the personality has to be right. So again, the skill base, I think, is very different if you're an in-house lawyer as opposed to a private practice lawyer, that kind of stuff. But just because you haven't negotiated satellite agreements doesn't mean you don't understand what's involved with them. And more importantly, I always say, if you give somebody the chance, like when I hire people, I go, well, I understand that you've got the skill to do this. right? And I'm giving you a chance. And you know I'm giving you a chance because you have no experience in this whatsoever. What you will do is work hard to prove to me that I'm right,
Yep.
right? Everybody wins in this. You will go
Yep.
outside of your sphere and also more importantly, you look at things with fresh eyes. I may go, this is how I've always done this. And you go, well, actually, have you considered maybe doing this? I'm like, oh shit, no, I haven't.
Yep.
That's right. Fabulous. Let's do it that way. Fresh eyes is also really important, as opposed to somebody who's always done something and they're just pushing this out. I'm like, and I'm guilty of that as well. I do a lot of stuff that I've always done, and every so often someone will go, fresh eyes, why have you done this way? I'm like, oh, there is a better way to do that. Never considered that.
Yep.
Fabulous. Everybody wins.
Yeah. Oh, and that's to me. I mean, that's how innovation. Talk about creativity. It's interesting because and I've noticed a lot of lawyers do have. There's a creative, sometimes part of them that they've had to push aside or something to pursue the career. But I think it comes out in the way you practice, like because you approach it from, and in a commercial sense, that's so valuable. And when you mentioned the hospitality, I'm like, how you a lot of the things, look, it just makes a difference because me and Courtney were in hospitality. That's how we met. It's how we built our first business. It's how we bought our first house. When I got into law, I was like, there is a lot lawyers could learn in terms of the service of clients from the
Yes.
hospitality industry, because what we would do for someone for a $5 coffee was above and beyond compared to if we're charging them $5,000 for a contract. But if
Yeah.
even a taste of that service, which when you're doing a guerrilla pop-up store, you're literally serving people their meals, like that embodiment of service, I think needs to be more in the legal industry.
I think that's the thing that a lot of lawyers don't get, and I'm talking from an in-house perspective. And I've seen a lot of in-house departments that run like a law firm, where people are scared to come and talk to them, that kind of stuff.
Mm.
No, you're part of the business. You support the business. My view is always, I am part of your business. I should never be a stop sign unless it's actually illegal. At best, I'm a speed bump to just slow you down and go, hang on, have you thought about these things? I am not, as a function, I'm not a revenue generator. So I shouldn't say no to stuff. I should identify the risks for you. And if it's something that I don't think you're quite getting, then, I escalate that. I think, I probably need to talk to your boss about this because I think you're running in a different direction. And if your boss says, fine, we've covered that, fabulous. That's my job. My job is not to say no to stuff. My job is to identify risk and to help you manage that risk based on the risk profile, the risk reward. So, and again, I used to teach about contract management, and
Mm.
the risk profile is something I beat quite heavily with people, the drum I beat. You need to understand the risk profile of a deal, and then look at the risk reward and see if the reward is worth the risk.
Yep. Yeah. It's an amazing journey you've been on. And so now, because I have to ask everyone this, you've joined Courtney, the Self-Employed Lawyers League. I know it's only early days, but can you tell me so far in your experience what it's been like and what you think of it?
It's collegiate. Like I said, and like you said, I've only just joined. It was interesting to hear people's stories, how they got to this spot as well. My kind of purpose really is to try and help people, if I can, who've just started this journey. I mean, I'm reasonably well established now. I've been doing this for 15 odd years on my own. My focus is always on pipeline. What work's
Mm.
coming through. So I'm hoping that some of that will translate through association. But majority of what I'm hoping to contribute is to help other people. If they can reach out to me, if they need someone to. I mean, I've mentored a lot of lawyers over the past. I've coached a couple of them. My thing, since I was retrenched, since that role was retrenched all those years ago and starting my own business, is I've tried to turn my focus away from what I can get from my professional life to what I can give in my professional life. So that's kind of one of the main reasons I joined this, is to see if there's any way I can help people.
That's amazing.
And it sounds very Pollyanna, but
No, it doesn't. Well, if anyone, I mean, anyone who's listening to this knows the motto inside the league whenever anyone logs in is the rising tide lifts all boats, which is why obviously getting someone like you early days, because that's what we want. As I tell anyone, someone else's success doesn't mean your failure. Someone else's success means there was a roadmap to whatever that outcome that they've achieved that you hope to achieve. And so, yeah, the ability to have people like you in there to be able to pass on the lessons and continue the drive to open up the world a bit. I call it being a human before being a lawyer. Be human
well,
first, and then your lawyer is the profession you do.
at the very least, I can at least explain to people how I've set up my business so that I'm 100% remote, how to be. So majority of the reasons I do that is because I travel a great deal. I made a
Mm.
decision that I worked and worked and worked for all of my, a fair chunk of my corporate life, and didn't enjoy life, didn't do anything because I was busy focused on, establishing my career and making sure I had longevity in my career, blah, blah, blah. Now that all came to a crashing halt when my role was made redundant. And I thought, well, hang on a minute. I should try and look at what's important to me, because time passes very, very quickly, and you put your head down, you work, and you look up, and 10 years have gone past. I'm at that age now where 10 years is actually quite a lot of time. So I needed to reprioritize. So a travel, going overseas to hike is a huge part of my, seeing different parts of the world. I've done amazing stuff. I've done stuff that, I've gone on the Silk Road. I've, done the Trans-Siberian Train, all sorts of stuff. I've hiked up Everest Base Camp. I want to make that a priority, and I'm trying to get work to fit around that priority. So that's why a lot of the stuff that I do is remote. And with
Mm.
technology now, you can, before I used to have to, factor time in to buy a physical SIM to put in my phone so that there's data and all that kind of stuff. Now it's an eSIM. You can buy it almost instantaneously, download it. You can be in a lounge somewhere and then download. I mean, I was just recently in Qatar, and I had to go to Italy, and so I was just in Qatar in the lounge. Download an eSIM for Italy, and off I went. And I can still work wherever I am.
Yep.
It's managing people's expectations as well. I do tell people that I have a 24-hour turnaround time. So if you email me something, I'll respond within 24 hours. That's my thing. So 24 hours may be 2 o'clock in the morning for where I am, but that's my problem, not yours. Things will get done.
Yep.
But technology
Uh,
works for you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and as you said, you were a pioneer back then doing it, so you've got learnt all the best ways to do it. In terms of pipeline and everything, what's the clientele that you're looking to service?
So I'm still, my main clientele is still the for-purpose, not-for-profit, and the arts organizations, and that kind of bubbles along depending on what's happening. At the moment, there is a funding shortage for a lot of the arts organizations because of a range of political issues. Um, so I'm still trying to do work for them, but I get paid less than less than before.
Yep.
So there's so the Robin Hood strategy is trying to kick in. So I'm trying to find corporate work as much as possible. And my priorities for corporate work, where the work that I'm doing is essentially for a better cause. So one of my main clients is a renewable energies organization. So that kind of fits my purpose. They
Mm-hmm.
pay well, but they also try to make the world a better place. There are several organizations that do research and development, R&D work, and they're clients of mine as well. So that kind of stuff. So those are that's the top tier ones because they pay
Mm.
well and they also fit my ethos. Then beyond that, if I can't find that, then anyone who pays well, really, so that I can fund the work that I do for the others.
Yeah, yeah. No, but I think again, you're sort of ahead of your time because I think the millennial, well, mine and Courtney's generation, are the companies that are being established or have been established the last 5 years do have um, it's the word I look for because it's not full capitalism. There's actually a benefit to society to go, hey,
For
just because you're
purpose.
entrepreneur, well, yeah, yeah, it's for purpose. Like it's profitable. Orange Sky Laundry is the example I give because when we started, we had a coffee cart franchise. We were partnered with them, and they were, the way they'd set up was just remarkable to me, because they were helping people who are homeless with laundry services, but they had a profit arm, and it was the Robin Hood strategy. And I could see those types of businesses seem to be becoming more and more prevalent. And I go, for me, I like capitalism. I like the system of it, but it's been abused by greedy people. And I go, just because you make profit, you can still solve good problems for society. That's the definition of an entrepreneur for me. See a need,
Yeah.
fill a need. And so I think, and I'm excited to see how we can, and that's part of the network of Cell, is how can we find these organizations that need someone like you with your productivity, which I did want to touch on before we go. That productivity you had in doing your master's and your study, that obviously has not left you, because you've certainly shared. You seem to be able to get through an immense amount of work in a short amount of time.
Yes, it's one of my skills. So in my last permanent job, I was notorious for having three screens at my desk, and all three screens were different pieces of work that I worked on simultaneously. I don't know, maybe I have ADHD, who knows? But I have this capacity to churn through work very, very quickly. My mind moves quite fast. And part of that's because I've seen a lot of stuff.
Yep.
There's not a lot that I need to relearn. As I get older, and that's the same with anyone in a job, if your experience makes you faster. The difference with me is that I've done so many different things that my experience is quite broad.
Yeah.
So I've looked at all this stuff before. So I'm reasonably quick. It doesn't take me terribly long to review a contract.
Yep. No, great. Well, and we'll put this in the show notes, but what's the best way for these for profit, for purpose organizations to get a hold of you?
Well, my website, www.paramco.com.au, has contact details, or you can just email me, george@paramco.com.au.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining me, George. I knew this was going to be an awesome conversation, and I'm sure the first of many in the future.
Absolutely. If you need any more, like I said, I'm here to help. If anything I can say that's going to help other people with my experience or background, and it's helpful for someone who's navigating some of the stuff that I've navigated before, happy to help.
Amazing. Thanks, George.